Hello everybody, how's it going? I'm Chase Jarvis. Welcome to another episode of ChaseJarvis Live. And this episode, specifically this series, is the 30 Days of Genius series. In this series, I sit down with the world's top creatives and entrepreneurs, and we extract actionable insights from these people, not just some fluffy thing. We get into real nitty-gritty and give you a ton of value. If you're not familiar with this, you can learn more at creativelive.com/30, the number 30 Days of Genius, and we'll tell you everything you need to know. But today, you are so lucky because I'm sitting down with the New York Times bestselling author of Newspaper Blackout, Steal Like an Artist, and Show Your Work. And we're going to sit down and talk about his new project, none other than the amazing Austin Kleon. All right, so good that you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. There's no kids screaming.
But the weird thing is,
comfortable
we're
couch.
sitting here. Usually, like you came up to Seattle to film a show, but we're actually in your hometown.
I wish I was in Seattle, but
next time, because you're one of my regular go-to inspirations.
Can I pick your brain?
Yes,
No.
I
Please don't.
Yeah, sadly.
You know, well, it's funny because you're someone who I know, like, you put out so much.
Yep.
You put out so much.
Can we contextualize that? I put out so much content. Is that what you...
Well, no, I mean content, but you're showing your work, right?
Yep.
You're sharing what you do, you're sharing your ideas and stuff. And I think sometimes when you're so generous at putting stuff out there, people get the mistaken idea that you're just like flush with time all the time.
Yeah, this guy doesn't even work.
Where do
you think this stuff comes from?
And I think it was Derek Sivers who was saying, I could go have coffee with you, or I could write a blog post that like a bazillion people could see, you know? Sure. And so like at a certain point you get to this moment where you're like, what's gonna, use that word scale.
Yeah,
like
what has the most impact?
Yeah. What can I give that's actually gonna scale and it's gonna mean the most to the most people?
The irony is that if I returned all the emails and had coffees, like then I wouldn't actually be able to do the thing for which you care about me and my work.
You wouldn't get so many emails.
But I would if I was, this is all right, this is about you, not about me. Come on.
This is us whining about our...
No whining.
Like,
There's no whining in Texas.
Right away, it's
We're in
us
Texas.
whining.
We can't whine. We should order some barbecue at some point so that we can have some little lunch after that. But I want to talk about you. So, Newspaper Blackout got you going.
Yeah.
Just so you know, that was a part of the 28 to Make stuff we did on CreativeLive.
Cool.
We did a Newspaper Blackout thing, and it was awesome.
That's
People
awesome.
loved it. And if you check out the hashtag 28 to Make, there are a bunch of sort of things that we stole from you and used as inspiration.
Awesome.
But your book, Newspaper Blackout, then Steal Like an Artist.
Yeah.
Which the last time I had you on the show, X years ago, we were talking about that book.
Yeah.
Huge success.
I don't think Show Your Work was out.
It wasn't. It was not.
Yeah.
So, like, for those folks who are new to you and your work, why don't we start? And not that Newspaper Blackout's awesome. Just go there. But
it's like the first album,
It
is.
is.
It's like Bleach or something, like
Nirvana's
Nirvana.
Bleach,
You
yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of like it's
I've heard
weird.
of that album,
it's kind
but,
of noisy, messy, and like but like
Steal Like an
Artist. Yeah, that's the one that people know. And
should we go back to the Picasso quote, which is I think certainly influential in that, right?
The funny thing is, in all the research on Steal Like an Artist, I never found any evidence that Picasso ever said
Got it.
that. It was
Good
T.S. Eliot.
Good artists copy, great artists steal.
Yeah, I know T.S. Eliot said, bad poets copy, great poets steal. And the thing I love, the reason the book starts with the T.S. Eliot quote is the thing he says that's so important that everyone forgets is like the good artist, he welds his theft into a thing which is completely different. He takes these things, but then he transforms it into something of his own. And that's the like an artist part, because a lot of people hear the steal part. Oh, yeah. Cool, it's good for I can just steal stuff and copy. And no, the book is really about the ethos of, you take things from the culture around you and you borrow these little bits and pieces, but you're like George Lucas, you rip off Westerns, you rip off Kurosawa, you rip off Flash Gordon, and then you make Star Wars. And Star Wars is this thing that like comes out into the culture and like really I mean, it changes everything, right? He's adding, so Steal Like an Artist was about starting out as a student, like George Lucas was.
Yep.
You start out as a student, and then you pay tribute or homage to these people who have influenced you. And the way that you flatter them is not through imitation, but it's through transformation. You make it into your own thing.
I do like the idea of giving credit also. I like the sort of overt, what's the other quote? It's like, if you steal from one person, it's stealing. If you steal from everybody, it's research.
Right. You steal from one author, it's plagiarism. You steal from 100 authors, it's research.
Right. But that's, I feel like most of there's a lot of folks that are watching this or listening to it, and they are either sort of, they're trying to go from 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, and they're not at the 10 to 100. Like they're not, sure there's a lot of established artists who listen to this, but there's a lot of people who are trying to find the courage to get their first step. And the thought of stealing, like I remember early on in my career, like gosh, do I have an original idea? I came from sort of white, lower middle class, but positive, happy family. Like I have nothing to say, what's my problem? Was this, how did you, like why stealing? How did you arrive at that being your first book?
Well, so I just part of how I got started. We're at South by Southwest, so a lot of what I did at South by Southwest in the early days was I brought my pen and my sketchbook, and I would go to panels. The first pass I ever got at South by Southwest was a really good friend of mine, Janet Pearson, who runs the film part of South by Southwest. She said, she had seen me drawing at another event. She said, why don't you come to South by Southwest and draw like the movies and panels and stuff? And so I started out as a fan. Like I would go to these panels and I would draw people and I would try to listen for the little like soundbitey stuff that I could copy down. And I would try to watch these kind of live events, these panels, and sometimes I'd draw movies too. And I was trying to like extract the really good stuff out of there that I could use later. And so a lot of my early life as an artist was about studying as much as it was about making stuff. And then taking what I was studying and then sharing it like on my blog or Twitter or whatever with other people. So a lot of people got to know my work because of like the drawings I was doing of other people, not my own ideas. So I've always been like a guy who loves to research, and one of the things I found, like one of our friends, Ryan Holiday, he's the same way. He's just like collecting, quotes and writing them on index cards, and he's got his big file. One of the things I kept noticing, and this is part of the artist's job, is pattern recognition. I kept noticing how many of these people I looked up to used the term steal, used the term theft, talked about how, I just steal stuff, man. You got David Bowie saying, someone asked him, like, are you an original? And he said, no, I'm more like a tasteful thief. He's like, the only art I'll ever study is the stuff that I can steal from. You got people like these giants. And so I thought something was there. And then, over the years, I just wrote a lot of blog posts and I was just trying to figure out how to be an artist. And then the book Steal Like an Artist started because a community college in upstate New York, they wanted me to give a talk to students. And I thought it was more highfalutin than it was. I thought it was like a commencement address. And it turned out just to be like...
Class of 28 people.
Yeah, I thought it was like, let me send you off on your way with all this knowledge. But it was really just like a convocation, or like, it was just in a gym. And there were a bunch of, the students were there. And I had prepared this like 10 things nobody told you, and I gave this talk, and like it went really well. But
all 82 people were just
floored. It was one of those things where I was like, wow, this was really good. I put a lot of work into this. What should I do with it? And I turned it into a blog post, and that was the thing that really took off. And then it became clear that like Steal Like an Artist needed to be a book, and that's how it all kind of.
That's a beautiful story. I love something you said in there when I was teaching myself how to become an artist. I think that's for the folks that I said earlier, we're going from 0 to 1. They're sitting there, and you might be in a cubicle working for the man, or you're inside a company and you want to be able to figure out how to be more entrepreneurial, or you're in a job that you don't love. And part of this, the series of this talk is these talks that I'm having with you and others like you are about how to help people live their dreams and career, hobby, and life. And this, it seems to me like going from 0 to 1 is you have to be intentional about it. It doesn't actually happen.
Yeah.
So give it, like, this is a journey. Did you sit down one day and you say, like, I no longer want to work in the library, I want to write books?
That's a great question. I had no aspirations whatsoever to be a professional writer. What I decided very early on, I had a very good professor, and we're here with this mug that says "Do what you love."
Yep.
So I'm like about to tell this story about how I never really believed that. But what happened to me was I had this really great writing professor in college, and he just basically he taught this course called the Publishing Marketplace, and he looked at us all and he's like, "Look, the majority of you will never make a living off of writing.
Welcome to class, day
Welcome
one.
to class, day one. Like, the majority of you will never make a living writing like short stories or poetry or whatever. So like, you got to get that clear right away. But you can have a life of writing, a life full of this thing that you love, no problem." And so very early on, I decided I'm going to try to get the most decent day jobs I can. And then I'm just going to the internet was really this is like 2004, 2005, everyone's blogging. So I got out of college, I was like, I'm going to start a blog, I'm going to get a job, and I'm just going to do my thing, And I started out working in a library, and that was as someone who loves books and wanted to be a writer, best job ever. Not for the reasons most people would think, though, in that one of my jobs as a librarian was to weed. And what that in librarian terms, weeding is like taking the books that no one checks out and like stamping them and putting them in the book drive.
God.
So like I got a real clear picture.
What's not working?
When I was working in the library of the books that people take out.
Yeah.
And the books that I loved and the stuff that I wanted to do was not necessarily the stuff that people were reading, And so that was like, but for a while
But that's pattern recognition, though. It goes back to, I think that was probably helpful.
So like my whole thing in the beginning, and the reason I'm having such trouble with our cultural moment right now, in that, we're in this era now where everyone is, okay, so like you have a friend and she comes to you and she's like, "Chase, I made you this bracelet."
Thank you.
And you're right, and she gives it to you and you put it on, and you're like, "This is amazing. Like, Jessica, this is just beautiful. God, you know what? You could have an Etsy store." That's like the first, what's the first thing we do in this culture? The minute anyone shows
Has a decent idea.
any like creative promise or an idea, like, "Oh, well, you could start an Etsy store." Like that's the moment we live in now. But like for me, I was just like, that was not. I was looking at people like, I was really into poetry, so like I was looking at people like Philip Larkin, who like his whole career kept his job as a librarian. Wallace Stevens, vice president of an insurance company. Poets are really instructive because poets have never been able to make a living.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're Billy Collins or something, but I think even he like teaches. So I always thought I'm gonna have this. I'm gonna have this day job, and then it's gonna be like Bruce Wayne and Batman, right? I'm gonna have like my Bruce Wayne gig, and then I'm gonna have like my Batman nights, And it was just very clearly delineated for me, and I just thought that was very.
So let me ask you a question.
That seemed very clean.
Did you have the job, the job that you loved, or was the job in service of your career or your passion or your hobby?
It was.
Did you intentionally link those?
Middle road. I took jobs that I felt like I would be. First of all, I took jobs that I could get.
Yeah.
I got real lucky with the library job because like library jobs, it's interesting. They're like, it's like a county job, so it's a really good job with like benefits, and you'll have like hundreds of people that like take the little librarian tests and stuff. And I think what worked out for me is I was in my 20s and I would take a really low salary, and it was like no problem. And I would work part-time, so I got the job. But I always kind of like had this middle road. The thing I did with my day jobs is I always wanted to take a day job that would inform the stuff I was really trying to do.
For sure.
So like the librarian stuff taught me like how to get at information I needed. I spent a lot of time teaching senior citizens how to use computers, and I realized like how poorly designed most of the internet was and what a big deal design was, and I like learned that there's such a thing as design and information design and that
User
kind of
experience,
thing. Got
sure.
really interested in that. And then my next job after that was I got a job as a web designer at the law school here in Austin at UT. And that's when I learned how to make websites. And that was always in the back, like, so it was interesting because I got that web design job because I had my own blog that I had like monkeyed with and like played with the template and stuff. And I, like my future employer, I was like, hey, I've already been, like, I can do this work.
Yeah, I got this.
Like, I want to take this job and learn how to really do it well. And that's how I got hired. And then those 3.5 years at the law school were all just like picking up web tips and like just building my blog, making it better and better and like putting more out. And then my last job I had was in advertising because what I would do is I'd build these really nice sites for people and then they'd just die a slow death because no one would ever update them. And then I'd do a really ugly site for like a really smart person at the law school who was really into keeping the website up and it would be great. And so I realized, like, oh, it's content. It's about what you put on the website.
Put in it. Yeah.
And so a buddy of mine got me a job at a digital marketing place down the street here. And I did that for a while, and that's why I did Steal Like an Artist. But every step along the way,
It's contributing.
Yeah, and it wasn't totally Bruce Wayne and Batman. I mean, it was like they informed each other. Like basically I would take a job that made me better at my side project, and then whatever I did on my side project would help me like amp up to the next job.
This is fascinating because it not only is it 0 to 1, but it's also the 1 to 10 because you're in there, you're doing work, and you're figuring out like if I did this and this, that might inform my other thing. I get asked that question all the time, like, how have you made this work? And I say one of two things. One, either do the thing that's informing the thing you want to do. Yeah. Like, if you can get paid, you want to be a high-end commercial advertising photographer and you can get paid to shoot a wedding, great, do that. I wouldn't actually promote that too heavily because what we want you to do is we want you to be able to, ultimately put the work out there that's going to get you the kind of work that you want. So, but holding a camera every day is very relevant to becoming this thing. So it's either that or I recommend something which is very different, which is like what can you do so that you maximize your time or freedom?
Yep.
And that's a lot of wait tables. Can you valet cars? Can you drive an Uber? Whatever to facilitate the freedom and the free time, and you can go there and do a job, not overly obsess about it. How much can you do that job just so you cover your expenses, and then spend the rest of your waking life focused on the things that matter most?
And I see there are two paths, and they both have pluses and minuses. Yeah. And a lot of it depends on, the work you want to do that you really want to do. But what you said is so. I think so to go back to the South by Southwest stuff that I was talking about earlier, I stopped advertising. I stopped doing that, like going to a event and drawing, because people started asking me to do it for money. And they would be like, come to our conference and draw these people. Yeah. And then we'll give you how much money.
And then you look down that path, you said, ooh, that's going to be a place where I don't actually want to be.
And there's actually a friend of mine, Sunny Brown, in town that she's got like a whole business doing that. And it's great. But like, to me, I was just like, that sounds really stressful. And like, it would take this thing that I actually enjoy doing and just make it like awful.
There is something about thinking about the end in mind. Because if you went down that logical thing of doing event photography or like you said, drawing the talk, that doesn't actually it might actually compete or like you said, burn out.
And work begets work, right? Yeah. Whatever the work that you do leads to other work. So you have to be kind of careful about what you share of yours. Whatever work you want to do, you just have to do that because work begets work. And so I made that decision very early on, like I got to stop. I went from drawing other people's ideas to drawing my own, basically, because I was like.
But can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
There's two things. This is the perfect transition to show your work. Yeah. But what I want to do is the transition of when you started doing your own stuff, because there is a time where you're either doing other people's stuff or you are imitating. You're like, I want to deconstruct that person's, or I want to design like this person, or I want to build my first internet business like Tim Ferriss or Lewis Howes or someone who is great at making online businesses, and yet there's some point where you flip that switch inside you and you start doing your own stuff. Yeah. Talk about that.
So, the idea at the heart of my third book, Show Your Work, is our traditional notion of creativity is genius. There are these superhumanly talented people. Jimi Hendrix, like they drop him out of a spaceship. He falls to Earth. He plays Purple Haze, sets his guitar on fire, and then they shuffles off. That's it. It's done.
His next show where he parachutes.
Yeah, and then he dies, and we're all just like, oh my god, what happened? Jimi Hendrix, and nobody like, and that's like how we think about it. Like, oh, he's just like this, and but the idea that kind of counteracts that, the kind of healthier notion of creativity is
of genius or creativity
of creativity
sure.
is or how ideas get, how culture gets made. Like usually it's genius. Someone just drops down, plays Purple Haze, and then like brings everybody up to their level. But the other way of thinking about this is what Brian Eno calls scenius. And scenius is a collective form of genius. So basically, like what you do when you're thinking about Jimi Hendrix, then all of a sudden you stop, like, oh, here's a superhumanly talented guy. He is superhumanly talented, but what were the environmental and social factors that led him to be this thing? And you start digging into Jimi Hendrix, you find out, like, well, he played on the Chitlin circuit for God knows how many years, like backing up the Isley Brothers and all that kind of. You learn, and Jimmy he's soaking up all these different influences. He's connected to all these different people, like Chaz Chandler of the Animals. You put that story together and you realize that a lot of creativity is about a network, and it's about being having an impact on the culture is not so much about being this lone genius, and it's much more about being this person that's connected to lots of different things and positioning yourself in a way in which you can have that impact. I mentioned David Bowie before. One of the things I loved about,
incredible artist.
So incredible.
So sad to lose him.
And I felt like the only good thing to come out of him leaving us was that we got this like wealth of amazing material, all these people coming out and talking about his work. And David Bowie, he's a classic example of a guy that just like, whenever he needs a new idea, he just like sets himself down in the right place and sits for a while and like just soaks up and like just like gets the feelers. And so, we talked about starting out. I think if you can stop worrying about being that genius, being that original person, and start thinking about more like, what other people are doing, and then what they're not doing. And then you find that Venn diagram of like what people aren't doing and what you could possibly take on. And that little sliver in the middle, like that's your work. That's what you should get on. And so, I was sitting there. It's funny because when I was drawing stuff at South by Southwest, there wasn't anyone else really doing that. There were like a few other people, and we met each other. And we got together and we said, hey, let's do a panel about drawing at South by Southwest. So we got all together and did this panel. And then all of a sudden, there are all these people drawing at South by Southwest. So we almost made ourselves obsolete.
That is a fear of sharing your work, which I think we should get to.
Well, yeah. And so, but then I realized, well, wait a minute, all these people are doing this now, so I can go do something else. And so that was, so constantly doing that as an artist. I think David Bowie is he's another great example in that like Bowie does work and he does it for a while, and then like so he does Ziggy Stardust, and then everyone gets into glam rock, right? Like everyone's into it, and then he's like, no, I'm gonna jump over here, and he makes his next move. And he keeps doing that throughout his life. I think Bob Dylan's another great example.
There's a lot of great reinvention. You said so many things I want to touch on. Let's visit the genius concept. So we're in the series, 30 Days of Genius, where people sign up and they get a little one of these things in their inbox every day. These talks like that you and I are having right now. And what I believe what CreativeLive stands for, in fact, is that there's genius in all of us.
Yeah.
And this, when you're sort of doing the thing that you're supposed to be doing, that genius inside of you has the opportunity to more easily express itself.
Sure.
Michael Mead, do you know that name?
I've heard of it.
Just talks about how genius is sort of being aligned with your true authentic self and then So
Yeah.
the hope is that people realize that there is a genius, or I think we can substitute creativity in every single person, and it's about trying to tap that, looking around in the marketplace and looking inside your soul. What is it you're supposed to be doing? And you put that out there, and it's the act of putting it out, building this community that will make you, to use Brene Brown's word, that make you rise.
Yeah, and there's also there's all this, like, genius brings this, like, idea of pressure. I've read one thing of Elizabeth Gilbert's. I feel really bad about saying this, but Elizabeth Gilbert, before she did Eat, Pray, Love and all that, like, she was an amazing journalist, and there's a great profile of Tom Waits that she did in 2002. And she talked about how Tom Waits would be driving along in his car, and he'd get this idea for a song, and he finally started, like, looking up and saying, "Can't you see I'm driving?" And, like, would just, like, go away.
I remember this.
And Elizabeth Gilbert gave this TED Talk. It was after Eat, Pray, Love, and I don't know a lot about her, but I loved this TED Talk so much. She just got up and she was just like, it's very possible my best work is behind me. I'm like 40 years old. I probably got like another 40
Yeah,
years.
she sold 1 million books.
Yeah, it's very possible this is it. But, like, I love this thing. I have to keep going. And what she talked about in terms of genius was kind of the old school Greek way of thinking about genius, which is genius was like more like the muse. It was something that visited you. That you weren't a genius, but you had a genius. You had something that, like,
I love
visited.
the distinction. I love the distinction.
And to bring it back around to the Tom Waits thing, the way your genius visits you is that you sit in a certain place at a certain time every day, or you do some sort of activity, and you let that in, right? And that's where your practice comes in. That's holding the camera every day. That's playing the cello
That's
every day.
That's the 28 to make thing, doing this exercise, the daily praxis of putting something out. So this is like, we're going back to the natural shift in the conversation here to show your work.
Right.
So Steal Like an Artist is this 0 to 1. You're like, I'm going to start gathering this stuff, looking inside myself. What do I have to add to this conversation, to this narrative, and how can I make it my own?
Yeah.
You said you're collecting these things and you weld them together into something new. You gave the Star Wars example. Now what?
Right.
Now what? You've got this thing that you made, and even 10 years ago, you'd have to get permission from the gatekeepers, from the gallerist to show your work, from the editor to get your work, whether they're visual or words or whatever, into the magazine or a book deal, any of those things, you'd have to have permission. Yeah. Today is a different day.
So show your work. It's funny, the books have to be out for a while before I figure out, like, what they're really about sometimes.
Yeah, like it's your 5th press tour. You figure it out finally, right?
So there's this tension with creative people, and everyone out there listening to us knows what it is. You've got your thing that you're really good at, that you love to do. And then there's all the, like, admin stuff. There's all the, but more than that, there's the self-promotion. And Show Your Work was really a book about self-promotion for people who hate the very idea of self-promotion. That's what it was really trying to be. I think you have to be two different people in those modes sometimes, because as an artist, you have to be very open and wondering and very, like, unsure. You have to kind of not know what you're doing. You have to have that kind of amateur spirit. And then when you're self-promoting, it comes from this place of confidence. I have this thing, like, here's
what I'm selling. Buy the new book.
Buy the Steal Like an Artist journal. And what I wanted to do was to get people who were really uncomfortable with self-promotion. Hey, let's just shuffle that aside, and let's rethink this in terms of sharing. Let's think about sharing, and let's think very hard about that word. And let's figure out if there's a way that we can integrate the making and sharing in a way, or somehow bring them together into some kind of balance. And so traditionally, the way that you think about your craft is your process is private. What you do, like how you get the work,
your magic.
That's like that's your thing, like that you keep hidden and like hid away from people. And then the product, the painting, the photograph, the whatever, that's what you share to people. And you only poke your head up when you've got this finished thing. Now, what you just said, that works great for that system. Like back in the day when you had a publisher that you were trying to pitch to. Here's my finished book. Here's my finished proposal. Here you go, right? Or, oh, gallery. Like, please, here are my finished beautiful paintings, whatever, right?
I'd like to have a show, please.
Right.
If you think I'm worthy.
That works in a world in which the only way you get access to an audience is going through one of those gatekeepers. Well, now we're in this world where you can reach anyone, anytime, anywhere. And so the only healthy way I could figure out how to do this stuff is to turn sharing into as much of a daily practice as
So you sort of flip the script, basically.
thing.
Like, this is my work.
And I think we're in this very interesting time culturally where people are just as interested in how work gets done as they are in the actual work.
That was my experience.
Which you've experienced.
Shooting behind the scenes videos where the term didn't even exist.
Right.
When I started doing it, and very rapidly, sure, a client would hire me to shoot a print campaign, and the ad buy for the print campaign would be, instead of gigantic global, all of these magazines, it's going to be everywhere all the time. They were making that smaller and smaller and smaller, and they were putting more of that time and money and energy into filming the behind the scenes, filming the story, the narrative about making the thing. So yes, you were still working on this campaign, but it really was the jewel wasn't necessarily the finished thing.
Right.
The jewel was the process to getting the finished thing.
Right.
So this is what you've done.
So Show Your Work is a book about how to figure that out. It's about how you can balance, and it's not just about how you can self-promote or share. It's about how to build a sustainable system in which the making and the sharing help each other. Like, you make the thing, and then you kind of share bits and pieces as you go, and then as an audience forms, they feed, like, how they respond to the sharing kind of influences the making. And now if you're a certain kind of artist, this is heretical. I mean, that loop I'm talking about is completely heretical because, for a long time our idea is that you've got this, again, you're a lone genius and you come up with the art and you put it out, and then people either like it or they don't. Screw them, you're on to the next thing. And there is a balance of like doing what you want to do and taking in what people give you. But that's what it was about. But I was inspired by like people who I was watching who were really good at this. Like, hey, like, I'm in the studio today. Here's like a painting in progress, or like here's like a blah blah blah. And I was trying to figure out how to turn what they were doing into a user's manual for other people. And that's
stunning. What a beautiful gift.
Yeah, that's what the book was supposed to be about. But I learned later on, because your book, the interesting thing about books is that you make them and you think they're one thing, but they're like art. You put them out in the world and then people tell you
what it means to them,
and it changes. So a book is almost like a piece of art. It's just a kind of mediary between you and the reader. It turned out that Show Your Work was a lot about education. It was about, and it spins off of this, Christopher Hitchens, the late great writer, had this quote, and he said, putting a book out to the world is like getting a free education that goes on for a lifetime. Because he's like, you put a book out in the world, and then the people who read it, they email you.
Comes back.
They phone you. They come to your events. They tell you what you got right. They tell you what you got wrong. And he's like, it's a free education that goes on for a lifetime. And so what I was trying to do with Show Your Work is, like, there are people who do really interesting work that they don't want to be a best-selling author. They don't want to be like some celebrity or something. They just want to make their thing and find a community of people that they can connect with. And so repitching this whole process as one of getting this education that goes on forever.
And the community, that's one of the things that I think is so powerful today, is that it's actually in the sharing that in the creating and the sharing of the work, most importantly, that the community comes together, and it's just a disparate group of people, and then they start gravitating around your work or someone else's work or whatever, and then we're all lovers of Austin Kleon, and I recognize someone in the chat room, or I recognize someone on the Twitter stream or whatever about this. Like, I love that.
So you're almost creating your own genius by being a node in the network, like where you position yourself and who you connect to. You're kind of building your own network. And so the idea behind Genius is like, maybe you aren't the photographer. Maybe you're the publicist, or maybe you're just the appreciator, maybe you're the blogger. There's this rich ecosystem.
Curator,
like any, and so there's that idea that like you don't have to be the main attraction in order to be part of this network that's like making ideas happen and like is rich and is inspiring everyone. And again, like I find that it's nice to, like my work now is how I make a living. Like what these books and like my talks and stuff is how I make a living. But like, and that's great. That's a great reward. But the really great reward is just the really interesting people I've bumped into. Now that's biographical to me because I grew up in a really small town. And all I wanted when I was growing up was other people who were interested in the same thing that I was interested in. Yeah. And I had none of that.
That's why this series exists. That's one of the reasons CreativeLive exists.
Right.
Like I wanted to bring access as a core value of CreativeLive. And what these, like tens or hundreds of thousands of people who are watching this, that they are now able to access you and your brain in a way that they wouldn't have been able to before. Which in turn, I get a ton of juice. There's a selfish aspect to this. Like I'm sitting here this far away from you and these other, rock stars that are peers or friends or people I aspire to be like.
I've talked to a lot of people that have kind of like, they've gotten internet famous or now they're doing this thing that they're known for. And I'll have lunch with them or something. And we talk about what's the best thing about it. And usually we decide this right here. Yeah. Like we're talking. We were, like one of the best, one of the best experiences in my young life has been to start out as a fan and end up a peer. You start out as like, you're looking up to these people. Like I'm seeing Seth Godin like on your board or something. And I remember being younger and Seth is this like hugely popular author and like,
is 17 books now or something.
Like this like guy, and I remember having breakfast with him and just like talking to him like we were peers. Yeah. Not even buddy, but just like, oh yeah, you're a writer too.
I can relate.
You know what
Remember
I mean?
when this happened? Yeah, here's how I felt. How'd you feel?
Now that can go very wrong. I mean, you can meet people that you wanted to be peers with and they're like complete jerks or something. But like that seems to be the that to me is really the when you meet when you start out as a fan and you become a peer, like I don't know what's better than that. That's like that's the real like
beautiful.
That's the thing. Even more than like making something that you're. I mean, there's this like making this thing that you're really proud of.
Putting the book out.
That's intrinsic. Doing this work that you feel like is really good. Because I mean, that's something we could talk about too.
And even getting paid for the work. Like that pay is a form of validation.
Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, I remember still having a day job and meeting people as peers, and they're like, "Oh, you still work over at the law school?" I'm like, "Yeah," and still like that. But that was still like a jolt.
Well, there's many things we can talk about baked into that before, but I want to get to your newest project, Steal Like an Artist, the journal version of that. Before we do, though, I can't help but realize that that showing your work and all the talk that we just went through around process, and to me, I'd like to shift gears for a second and go into your process and you personally for just a few minutes here.
Yeah.
So, morning routine, what is it?
My morning routine is completely based around my kids.
But you clearly have designed a life that works around your kids because you have a routine, right?
Yeah. So So when I get up in the morning, it's very much like getting the kids wrangled and like getting them breakfast. And I make my wife coffee and we have breakfast and like, that takes forever. Like it's glacial. I don't want this to turn into like a daddy blog session, but like just the glacial pace of family life is just like, oh my God. Like you look and you're like, it's been an hour and I've barely gotten breakfast on the table. The thing that my wife and I have done with our kids that has been such a huge, great thing for us is we have a double stroller that we call the War Rig. like Mad Max.
I love it.
And it's like this ginormous stroller. We stick our 2 boys in there and we go for an hour walk, like every day.
Wow.
Like if it's raining,
doesn't matter.
put on the poncho. You're out there, and that is always that is probably the heart of my intellectual life at the moment, because my wife has always been like my editor and my partner in crime, and so we'll just it's usually just me talking a lot of the time, but I mean, like we consult and we figure things out while we're on our walk, and then when we get back from that, she'll do. She'll get ready for the day, and then I'll do some exercises and listen to podcasts and get my shower. And then I might not roll out to the studio till like 10 o'clock. So it's almost like agency hours or something, so I'll roll out at like 10 o'clock, and then that's when I always try to do the creative, like real important stuff first. So like I'll go in there and I'll make a poem, or I'll try to write 500 words or whatever, like right out of the bat, like right out of the gates, and then I'll go in for lunch, and then I hang out with the kids. And I work at I work out of my garage. I have a detached garage, and so it's a 10-foot commute. So
That's pretty
I can
short.
so I can just like pop out of the house, go into the garage. And I've talked to people that work from home. It's really important to have, like, you got to have a
space.
door, first of all, for sure. But, like...
especially with kids, I bet.
You cannot work in a house with kids. Like, I know some mother writers who, they'll wait until nap time to write and that kind of thing. But, like, I have to be out of the house. Like, there has to at least be 2 doorways in between us. So
you got some exercise in there. You got moving your feet, getting some blood pumping. You got breakfast.
And I should mention I always have my notebook with me. So, like, I'll take a lot of notes, like, in the morning. Like I'll get back from the walk and I'll, like...
Jules spill the cereal, or what kind of...
No, it'd be like, Megan and I were talking about new urbanism and, like, cities and working and space. And, like, I'll make little notes to myself. You know what I mean? In the notebook. And then...
But then you said, but then I got some exercise, like
exercise
on top of exercise.
I just do push-ups and like crunches,
just basic stuff.
Like basic stuff. Like
when we've talked
simple.
before about meditating. I'm a meditator. Yes. You said that you carve out 10 minutes every day. This is just it's a recurring theme for me, and it has been.
Completely fell off the meditation wagon. Like I
So
there
is life after meditation.
There is life after meditation.
For the people who are struggling. You can still be happy and successful.
You can, but like I think it's great. I love meditating. I'm gonna figure out a way to integrate it. But like this is the other thing that I think like you just we're in this like life hack. Make yourself into a cyborg type moment in our culture where everyone is just trying to figure out how to optimize themselves and like become this great version. It's like just do what gets you through the day. Like, just like productivity is so overrated in so many ways. Like sometimes, like just like think about doing good work. Like just like people are just so like, oh, I gotta do this. It's like you don't have to do anything. Like what you need to do is do every day when you go to bed, you need to make sure that you did the thing that gives your life meaning. That's like pretty much it. Like when you hit the pillow, like whatever you did that day.
Did it matter to you?
Did it matter to you? It's not like checking some life hacker box, like, oh, I got my meditation in, and then I did my like
another 100 followers
bullet journal, and then I like, all that. It's just like, did you practice the thing that feeds you? Did you do something that mattered? Did you try to spend your day in a way that you felt like you were
mindful or
whatever? The
positive.
rest doesn't matter. So I got to a point with meditating where it was like, I like doing this, but at the end of the day, if it's between me making a poem and meditating, I would rather do the poem. Now, the interesting thing about meditating for me is that it's a practice. A lot of what I got from meditation is like staring at, like when I make one of those blackout poems, it's the same thing. I completely zone out and the words just kind of like, they just kind of turn into this mass and I just like, stuff pops out and I circle. Like it's a very meditative activity. And I think that drawing and making poetry, there's something about the solitary process of it. It's a lot like prayer. It's a meditative practice as is. But I mean, the point I'm trying to make is just that, like, I let go of what I think it's really important to, like, let go of what you think you should be doing.
Should is just a bad
and
thing,
just like, and to really zoom in on like what makes you feel alive when you're doing it. You know,
it's
like
beautiful.
What, you know, and that sounds touchy-feely, but it's really...
One of the things that I want some takeaways to be some really actionable takeaways. It's not, when I say morning routine, I find that there is a routine.
There's all,
And there is the difference for, like, whether, and I don't know what the right way of talking about it's not success. It's like the people who I end up really connecting with who have done stuff, and it doesn't matter if you redefined, you know, the garbage system in Kansas City or you're a Pulitzer Prize winner. There's like just the desire to achieve or to see or do something and make an impact that transcends yourself.
Yeah.
There's a routine for almost all those people.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be, you know, like the contents of the routine is actually what I'm less interested in. It's just the fact that there's, oh my gosh, that there is this routine.
I am scheduled within an inch of my life every day. Like, I just am. I mean, like, I know when I'm going to be up. I know when I'm going to go to bed. I know, like, when things, and so that sounds very, like, it sounds like a bummer to some people, but I'm like, especially when you're a parent, having a very intense schedule frees you because you know when you're going to have time. Because I've been in a house, like, watching a kid and looking at the clock and just being like, when am I ever going to get to write? And it's the worst feeling in the world. But, like, now it's like, I know when I'm going to have that time. And it's like Tom Waits in the car. Like, can't you see I'm changing a diaper? You know, it's like, you know, you're like...
Well, I'm not going to not let that go because it's less about the content for the people out there in the world and more that there is a thing, so that you actually do think about what you do every day. And I love the intentionality there. But I also want some other ways for people to get in and sort of know you, Austin, a little bit better. So tell me a story about something that people don't know about you, that or people that they know your work, but that they definitely wouldn't know about you.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, like, I
know you're pretty open guy.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm a really suburban guy now. Like, I have, like,
You have a double-wide baby carriage called Mad Max.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Deathmobile.
Like, I live in, like, a really boring, like, nice little neighborhood in Austin, like, kind of out on the, like, southwest, and, like, I have my little... It's like a 1974 ranch house. It's very just chill. And like, I am my idea of like, I think people might be disappointed if they realized how mundane like my life is. Like I went to P. Terry's this morning at 10:30. P. Terry's is the burger place here. It's like In and Out, only like way better. And like, it's the local chain here. And it was like, we pulled up in our SUV, which I'm just like, oh God, my life. But like, we pull in, and my wife and I get the kids out, and we go in, and it's nothing but other families. Because it's 10:30. Who would get a burger at 10:30?
Yeah, exactly.
People with kids would.
Apparently.
And so it's just like a Chuck E. Cheese in there. It's just like, people are just like, it's just like families. But I think that what I am, I'm very much interested right now in, I think America is increasingly becoming homogenized and blander and more like strip molly and just like really like just Costco's for miles and Walmart, you know. And I think that I'm really interested in being a refinery for junk. Like, I'm very interested in how can we take this wasteland, like going back to Mad Max, like how do you take a wasteland and get inspired by it? Because I find like a lot of America to be so intensely ugly and bland. But I'm interested now in...
How do you flip that?
Like, how do you take this kind of like, you know, because as a culture, we're just like you just see things like just falling apart and just becoming like, but how do you take that and find some sort of wonder in your day? Because I think if you can master that, if you can figure out how to keep your curiosity Like I used to work in this office where it was just like fluorescent lights and cubicles and everything was tan. It was just like everything was tan, beige. And I just remember sitting there and just being like, how am I supposed to live in this environment?
Sounds very Kafka-esque.
It's very Kafka, but it's like, but that's like part of our job now is like to be able to keep wonder. Like this is my big question. How can I continue to be inspired when I take my kid to Costco? Like how can I be inspired at the Costco food court as much as if I'm in like walking the hills of Silver Lake in Los Angeles or out in Red Rocks?
But it's a
you know
choice.
What I mean?
It turns out scientifically and matches my own experience that it is a choice. Happiness, awareness, beauty, joy, all of those things are things of our own.
Because you can be like like I gotta go, you know, or you can be like.
Can you do that again? That was so
Twitter, Bernie, Trump, you know. But like to be like to look at everything with, I call it the Walgreens gene. That my father-in-law is this guy who's lived in Cleveland his whole life, like most of his life. I mean, he's a brilliant guy. He went to Harvard and like came back, and he's a newspaper writer. But like, I watched my father-in-law go into a Walgreens one time, and it was like if you went into the MoMA, basically. He was just like
Floss.
so like, look at all this shit. Look at this. Look at this. You know, like his wonder and being, and he could do the same thing with this crappy suburb that he lives in. And like he can drive. Oh, did you see? Like he's always like aware. He's looking at like all the stuff that you would ignore. He's looking at that, and so you know, like I thought, oh my God, this is a way of being. What this is this is a way of operating.
Yeah.
You can
Ignore
decide.
Nothing. Beauty is everywhere.
Yeah, you can decide. I will look for the gems here, or I will just accept this as what it is, and like I will find the inspiration in it. And it's funny because like ever since I've made that switch, I've found all these artists like John Baldessari's one. He lives in LA, and I think I have fun in LA. I really like LA, but he's like, why would I live anywhere great? He's like, I have to be angry to make work. He's like, I have to live in Los Angeles, so I'm like,
get in my car and drive for an hour and 30 minutes.
So I'm angry enough to make stuff. Why would I, you know? I like that. I like that idea of a artist being a refinery for, like, one of my favorite artists I found recently is this woman named Sister Corita Kent. And she taught at Immaculate Heart in Los Angeles, and her work, what she did, she took a lot of photographs. She would take advertisements and she would turn them into these beautiful screen prints that had like a religious context. So she'd take like a picture of a bag of Wonder Bread, right? Like just a crappy old white bread, like, you know, wrapper. Literally take a picture of white bread, and then she would take out the word wonder and like blow it up real big, and then have bread. She would bring out the religious context of like Wonder Bread, like the toast, and you know, like she would figure out a way to take this garbage that she saw, like most of it, you know, advertising, like this clutter, this visual pollution, and she'd figure out a way to like turn that into this like sublime work. And that's what I'm really fascinated in. Well,
you know, that was your prompt. Your
creative
prompt.
Wastebasket.
Wastebasket.
Part of like not. So
we're going here. We're going here now. Still like an artist.
Mode.
No, the journal. So there are. Give us the 30,000 foot of this, and then we'll go into the actual wastebasket.
So the Still Like an Artist journal is. I came off of like Show Your Work, which was all about sharing and being connected and stuff. And I was thinking again about how important my notebook is to me. Like as we're like on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat or whatever, there needs to be a private place to be alone with your thoughts. And so I was thinking some more about like a paper notebook. Like a lot of people are like, why'd you put out a paper notebook, dude? Like it's 2016. I'm like, because like a paper notebook it's like a walled garden. Like, because I can jump in here and I can write down whatever's on my mind, and then I can either share it or I can close it and put it away, you know? And so, like, I think, when people talk about creativity and getting ideas and stuff, I think we're all having ideas all the time. I think it's just that we don't even know what's in our heads because, again, we're distracted by, or we're just like, we're distracted. And so the quote that I opened up the Steel Journal with is by Mary Oliver, and she's a poet. She says, I think we're creative all day long. We have to have an appointment to have that work out on the page because the creative part of us gets tired of waiting or just gets tired. And so what the Steal Like an Artist Journal is supposed to be is it's supposed to be a way for you to kind of get in touch with your ideas every day. And the point of the book is to be, you asked about the term creative kleptomaniac before. My idea is that if you're on as an artist, you're constantly looking for those bits to steal. You're like a jewel thief or something, right? You're like always casing the joint. You're always looking around. You're always looking for little bits and pieces that you can steal and put into your work. And so what the journal is supposed to be is a very lo-fi, simple, dumb tool for you to take those mundane things in your life, that everyday life that is not inspiring you, and to turn that into something that you can use.
There's so many. I'd love to just put a couple of these things on display. So there's like this gratitude page.
Oh,
I don't know if
yeah.
you can get on this.
So this
thanks to blank
who taught me blank. So I ripped this off of most of these are stolen. Like it's stuff that I've found. This is Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor. He starts.
Are you friends with him?
Yeah, we're in touch. We're on the Ouija. No, but he at the beginning of the Meditations, which is basically his journals that they saved and now is like a book. It's like a self-help. It's like one of the first self-help books because it's literally Marcus Aurelius writing down to himself what he should be doing with his life. But he starts that book out thanking people. And he's like, thanks to my father who taught me blah, blah, blah. Thanks to my great-grandfather, blah, blah, blah for this. And I thought, oh, that was cool. So we should, what if that was an exercise? What if you went through your life and, gave shout outs to people? So that's just one little
I love it. And there's another one.
It.
So your prompt was wastebasket, and what people are doing as a part of this series is when they're listening to this, just do something with a wastebasket.
Right.
Take a picture of it, sketch it, share it on any of your social feeds with hashtag 30 Days of Genius. And so your particular prompt of wastebasket, you actually have some stuff.
Yeah, so I use my own. This is a little off. It's a little suggestive, but so I was using my journal, and I just moved. I just bought that house I was talking about, and I was moving into my new studio. And so my wastebasket was full of IKEA instructions, which I hate. And so
is there anyone who doesn't?
Yeah, right.
That's to be the worst.
So I made a collage out of IKEA
Stuff in your trash.
Instructions. So that's
brilliant.
That's it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, this is the stuff I.
So let me. I'm gonna just randomly pick out.
I think that's another thing I want to say about creativity is we just have this high bar for making stuff, and I would just encourage people to make bad stuff. Just it doesn't matter. Just as long as you're making something, make bad stuff. I'm a big fan of Sturgeon's Law. Theodore Sturgeon, he was a sci-fi writer, and he said 90% of everything is crap. And I feel that way about my own work. I gotta make 9 terrible poems before I make one that's worth saving. Wow. Having a low bar of because
takes the pressure away.
Yeah, because if you are worried about painting the Sistine Chapel every day, you're not gonna work because you're gonna be scared. Whereas, if you're just I'm gonna make the worst, this is such a great exercise. It's I'm gonna make the worst thing I can make, just right now. I'm going to shoot the crappiest photo. I guarantee if you went out with your camera, right now, and was I'm going to try to take the worst, cheesiest, cliched photo I can take, you'd probably, if you shot enough of them, you'd probably come up with something actually good.
That's very true.
Just because, because so much of the work is just, being loose.
Being loose. I want to read a couple of things from your book. 10 things I probably think about more than the average person. I'm going to turn this real-time live on you right now. What are 10 things? Actually, give me 3 things that you think of more than the average person.
Oh, God. Right now, I'm thinking about chance. I'm really interested in tarot cards and the I Ching right now. I'm thinking about like chance operations and how to use that for art. There's a bunch of like John Cage and a bunch of weird artists that use chance operations.
You think of that more than I do.
I
for sure.
think of that a lot. I think about not just parenting, but I think about I think about parenting a lot.
I think a lot of people think about a lot of parenting, so I'm not going to give you that.
Yeah,
It
that's not good. See, but this is hard. It's hard to do
on the fly. For
on
sure.
the fly. That's why
we're doing it. This is why it's
on
interesting for the people at home.
I think about
I'm gonna let you off the hook
that
there.
thing I thought I was telling you before about how to take your mundane, everyday surroundings and turn them into something sublime. I think about that a lot.
That's fascinating. That's beautiful.
I think about recently. I've been thinking a lot. This kind of ties into the chance operations thing about, finding yourself at a certain moment in your life. I think, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about lately with social media and just this crush of seeing other people's lives constantly. I feel like everyone, if you're a certain age, everyone the same age, their lives are alternate universes for choices you didn't make. This is an idea I stole from this writer named Tim Kreider. And I think the crush of that is really something contemporary and new. Like having to constantly be bombarded with people's images of this life that they're leading. The FOMO and just like the fear of missing out and that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing with your life, I think is crushing a lot of people.
Yes.
Instead of like kind of thinking about it in cosmic time and what a complete miracle it is that you even exist.
Yeah.
I think
and you get to be inspired by that as opposed to comparing everyone else's highlight reel to your real life.
That's right.
That can be
comparing someone's highlight reel to your behind the scenes, that's like the crush. So I think about that a lot lately. So that's 3 things.
All right, here's another one. Make up a really good lie about yourself and tell me right now. Invent a short story to back it up.
I was a champion golfer when I grew up.
You have the build.
My father was very interested in golf. And he made me watch, Jack Nicholson clips and Arnold Palmer clips.
Or Jack Nicklaus, because Jack Nicholson is
see, you caught me. You caught me.
Let's see another
Although
one.
my dad really does like Jack Nicholson too.
Great. What are you really working on? This is a prompt.
Yeah, this is something that came out because I did the same your 28 days thing. I did it with the journal on my own feed, and I'm really working on. I'm supposedly working on a new book, but what I'm really working on is trying to figure out what I'm interested in.
Can we talk about that as an artist? Because
yes.
I know so many people that have gone on to just. I can cite most recently Macklemore. When you sell 15 million or 15x platinum album as your first album, and that's singles and album sales combined. What do you do next?
What do you do?
And it took him a long time and a lot of in and out to go back and find something. And their new album just dropped, and they're on tour right now. But I talked to him briefly about that. I've heard him interviewed at other places. Like, what is that? What kind of headspace? That's a tough headspace. So talk about like, how are you figuring that out for yourself?
I think it requires a lot of backing up. I mentioned the I Ching before. One of the I don't know if people are familiar with the I Ching. It's basically a book of like prompts that you throw coins, you get this hexagram, and you look up what the prompt is. But it's ancient Chinese, and one of the things it's been telling me lately is just like to retreat and to think and to back off. And I think so. So for me, it's a lot of trying to just make space for because when you hit the success point. When you're Macklemore, you could stay busy forever, right? I mean, like whether it was like answering emails or he could probably make a living just showing up places. Like you show up at a party and they give you like $5,000 or something because you're Macklemore. I mean, like there's probably like all kinds of goofy. Yeah. I'm sure it's more than 5, but like like you just like there's just so much like admin. You could do interviews forever. Like I don't do a lot of interviews anymore.
I know. I'm
because I'm just like. But like, it's like I could spend all day being on people's podcasts. There's so many podcasts.
There's so many podcasts.
And like, but like you could stay busy once you hit a certain level. And so you have to really carve out time to do nothing. To be back at that point where you have nothing to lose, and to be back at that, like, what would I do if no one cared? To go back to that point. What would I do if there was no audience? Like, what would I be interested in? But also, like, figuring out what that is. Like, what would I do if no one was looking? What am I truly interested in? But then I think there's also, like, if you do build an audience, it's more interesting if you can think about what they're interested in, too, and again, find that Venn diagram.
When your audience overlaps with your passions.
Yeah, because I mean, you could just thumb your nose at them. You could do the Nirvana thing. Like, I always think about it in terms of music. Like, so you get your Nevermind, and then you're just like,
for those of you who don't know, that is their mega hit album that had "It Smells Like Teen Spirit" on it. It was after their first album called Bleach, which didn't really get critical acclaim.
I forget that Nirvana is like 20 years ago. Like, there were probably kids watching. They've never even heard Nirvana, right?
25.
25. Oh, we're old. But yeah, so like it's like you get this like blockbuster album, right? And what does Nirvana do? They are like, we're gonna make the ugliest, loudest record we can. And they make this album called In Utero. And it's thumbing their nose at all these meathead, like, frat boys that showed up at their shows and started moshing and stuff like that. It was like a very calculated thing on their part. And I remember reading Questlove of The Roots talking about, like, every time they did an album, they knew they were going to lose half of their audience because they were just on their own
getting
thing.
out there. And
I'm always interested in, like, balancing out what I would love to do with, like, whatever audience has shown up, like, what they're interested in, what they need. That's just more interesting to me. Because, like, honestly, if I was going to do anything, if someone just sent me a check all day, I would just sit around and read. Like, I don't care. I just read books until I ran out. Luckily, I'll never run out.
Yeah, there's a lot of books. There's
a lot of books. So,
it's the same is true for me. I can validate that same sort of dialogue, that internal sort of self-reflection.
And I think also you can do both. Like, you can do your little passion project, and then you can do the work of, like, helping your audience get where they want to go, or giving them, not what they want, because that's pandering, taking them where they need to go.
I like that concept very much.
Helping them get to where they need to be going.
Steal Like an Artist journal, bought, sold everywhere.
Everywhere.
All
Anywhere
over the damn
books
place.
are sold. Airports, Walgreens.
So, tell me one thing that's going extraordinarily well for you right now.
Well, my son's birthday was yesterday.
That's cool.
And keeping a kid alive for a year.
He's 25, 26?
He's one. Keeping two children alive for a year, that's going very well for me. I'm really, we're in Austin. I've actually really gotten back into Austin. I was really down on Austin for a while, but I realized it was my neighborhood I didn't like. And I'm in a new neighborhood now, and the city's new, and I think it's a real... it feels to me very much like a lesson in that sometimes you just gotta, like, reposition yourself in order to see with different eyes.
Best advice you ever got?
Best advice I ever got was my old man. He said, live below your means. Live below your means. You'll always be free. Because if you can live below your means, that means it's the Bill Cunningham quote, if you don't take their money, they can't tell you what to do. But monetary freedom means creative freedom. So if you can take the money you make and live cheaper than that, you'll always be good.
What about the worst advice you ever got?
I think, the worst advice I ever got. I think do what you love is terrible advice. I just think it's too broad. I think love what you do is a little bit better. Mm-hmm. I think do what you love is just like one of the most... I know what... Be yourself, I think, is also... I think that's kind of one of those cliched piece of advice. I think be your best self. Just stick a couple of things in there. Be yourself because, sometimes, like... Did you ever watch Chappelle's show? Dave Chappelle. When keeping it real goes wrong?
Yes.
You remember that? People like, I keeps it real. And, like... But Dave Chappelle said this thing. He's like, it's good to be real sometimes. It's good to be phony sometimes. Like, most of civilization is like tamping down what you'd really like to do. Like, your honest expression of yourself. Like, I'd like to shoot everyone in this room right now. That's who but I don't know. I've been lucky in that I've had good advice. I don't know.
What's something that you think most of us, doesn't have to be all of us, but most of us take for granted?
Just what I said before, just the cosmic, the unbelievable, the randomness that had to happen for you to even be here.
Have you seen the Louis C.K. bit where he's like, he gets on, he's sitting next to the guy on the plane, the guy gets on, he's like, hey, they have internet on this plane, that's awesome. And they get up
You're
there.
in a chair in the sky.
It's like, and the internet stops working. Yeah. And he's like, what? He gets all mad at the flight attendant, like, wow. Yeah. And like, you are flying through the air at 600 miles an hour.
Yeah. I think, though, that if you look at, universally, if you look at the great texts, the message is the same. One day you won't be here. And so you get this. This is what you get. Whatever you believe, like, right now, you get today. Like, what are you going to do with it?
Life is required until it's not, and suffering is optional.
I like that. I just
made that up on the fly. I think the suffering is optional.
Good.
I've heard before.
That's pretty good. I just think, like, today is.
I'm gonna watch our whole show and then I'll tweet myself.
Today. You tweet yourself.
I just had a great interview with Austin. Here's my quote.
Here's my new favorite thing. You get a newsletter from someone and it'll be hyper. They'll have like a. I'm sorry if you do this, but like you'll get a newsletter from somebody,
I don't know if I want to hear.
They'll hyperlink their own text and they'll be like, "This would be good to tweet. You should tweet this." Like, tweet this.
I don't do that.
Like, underline, like, here's my really great idea you should tweet. We just live in this absurd time. And I get it. I know, it's, but like, it's just bizarre.
I have a couple.
This. Tweet that.
Tweet
Here,
this.
I'm going to say something really smart you should tweet right now.
Would you give me one of those just because you said not to? Tweet this.
Tweet this. I don't.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
What about if is there with no limits to their place in our culture, if there's someone I should talk to in this series? I got a couple slots left.
Oh man, someone you should talk to. Oh, like around here or
in
just
the universe.
In the universe.
It would be nice if you could connect me with them, but I
don't know. I'm trying to think of who I could connect you to.
It doesn't.
The person from afar who I've spent a couple of hours with her, but who has been a huge teacher to me is the cartoonist Linda Berry. I think she is the most. I think what she's done with her career and what she's doing now and her attitude towards art making has informed me in so many ways that I can't even. But she's one of those people that doesn't do a lot of interviews. So, but she's wonderful. I'm completely blanking right now.
What's the longest your hair's ever been?
Oh, middle school, not very long. Maybe here.
Here was it. Bushy or
bushy. I mean, the one thing God gave me is like a pretty decent head of hair, and it gets big.
Nice.
So I got to keep it pretty short.
Nice.
Yeah.
What haven't we talked about that we should?
I don't know. We've talked about a lot.
We've covered a lot of ground.
I'm
proud of how much ground we covered. You're an amazing interview.
Well, I think that the one piece that I think we talked about before actually. But I'd like to say it again is forget about the noun. Forget about the thing you want to be. Like, forget about being a great photographer. Forget about being a great writer. Forget about being a great plumber or whatever. Just think about the verb. Like, forget that noun. Think about the verb behind that work. Take a lot of photographs. Write a lot of paragraphs. Fix a lot of pipes. And if you can forget about that noun and being that thing and you focus on the verb instead, that will take you further and it will keep more options open to you than anything else.
There is no better way to end an interview than right there.
Okay, I'm going to go home.
My man, thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Man. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
So much gratitude. That wraps up another episode of ChaseJarvis Live here on CreativeLive, part of the 30 Days of Genius series with my man, Austin Kleon, don't forget about this here book. Heartfelt, like you can do a lot of great work in this little piece of book right here.